Hello survivors and welcome to another video. In this video we're going to be discussing the AI changes that I guess a lot of people have been experiencing this past weekend during war. I was not very active this weekend. I was extremely busy elsewhere, unfortunately. I did war a little bit. I did queue, to help my faction to actually get some wars in. I did get a couple of wars and I noticed quite quickly that some characters were just not viable anymore. And unfortunately, some of the characters that I'm talking about here are characters that are pretty much only viable on attack and only viable by making them a very glass cannon build. They're getting killed turn 1 on their own attack, and I'm talking about characters like Sandy, characters that you have to build very, very, very offensively, basically to combat these massively defensive defense teams. During war, this is amplified with the fact that there are a lot of defensive towers, so you have to have at least one character in your team that can obliterate someone. It has to happen. But unfortunately, due to the AI changes, this character just gets automatically focused turn 1, and they're focused by 5 defensive characters, but they are annihilated because of that focus. Something that is quite amusing with this as well is that there is a character that has just been released in the season store, obviously, and it is Leon, and you have to kind of gear him really offensively to get the best out of him, and he's just going to be focused turn 1 now and killed out. So he's only just been released, but already, even though a lot of people kind of wrote him off because of that low attack stat, I still thought he had use. But because of the AI changes, you can't gear him properly to get the best out of him, and the AI changes is going to be what makes him useless, not so much the fact that he has not the greatest attack stat. So what's now going to happen is a lot of people are going to start using things like revives on attack and shields on attack, not out of choice, mainly out of necessity, to actually get those damage dealers protection to make them be able to survive more than the first 2 turns so they can actually get their rushes off. I just don't think that this change has been great, and I think it massively counters something that's been in the game since the beginning, which is trait damage. When a character is a fast character on a defense team, if there is a tough character on the offensive team, that fast character should focus that tough character. Now when I take my Sandy against an all blue team, she is the only alert character on my team, so she should get focused. It 100% makes sense in my mind that she's going to get focused and absolutely annihilated, and I'm 100% fine with that. But when I take my Sandy in against a full strong lineup and she gets focused by 5 strong characters when there are fast characters on my team, that doesn't make any sense when it comes to how the game's meant to work. And I know that AI changes have basically changed how the game's meant to work in terms of those characters on defense are now focusing either the weakest character or the most dangerous character for that defense team. But how are you meant to build an attack team now? An attack team isn't 5 separate characters, it's 5 characters that work together to make an overall unit. You generally have a big damage dealer or 2, you generally have a leader, you generally have a support character who is going to either buff your characters or just give you a little bit of resistances in terms of maybe Guardian 2 shields, this sort of stuff. And you have maybe all-round characters like Kate, for instance, who are going to help you in maybe a couple of areas, and she's a 5-star. Now, within the premium characters, I'm guessing this isn't affected too much just because a lot of characters within promos have so many strings to their bow that they're just overall, every character is going to be able to add something and going to be very strong. Within free-to-play, a character only really has one thing to offer, and it can just be damage. So if that character only adds damage to your attack team, they're basically completely countered by these AI changes, and the only place a lot of these characters, like I mentioned before, are actually viable in any way is on that attack team. You can't really use a Sandy on a defense team. I have seen Sandys on defense teams. You can take them out turn 1 just because, like these AI teams are doing, is you can focus that character and annihilate it turn 1. If that's the same thing that happens to these characters on attack teams as well, where do these characters sit now within the raid system? They can't be on defense teams because you can easily focus them and take them out. They can't be on attack teams because the AI is now focusing them and taking them out. They can't be anywhere. So you have to take a revive to pick these characters back up. We are starting to see decapitates on defense now. So obviously, because of the AI changes as well, the decapitate attacks last. So they know they're going to get a decap on that character. And again, you can't revive that character. I do think some AI changes did need to come in, but I do think the AI changes need to be based on traits. So for instance, like I said before, if there are 5 tough characters on a defense team, my Sandy should be taken out. However, if it is a mixed team, all of that team shouldn't be focusing one character, especially if they are going to be doing trait damage to other characters. Trait damage should always be the most important thing to defense teams, because that's how you can counter these teams. Because you can take in mixed teams, you can take in, partially different teams, be it 2 fast and 3 alert behind a Michelle. But if they're getting focused regardless of trait, there's no way you can really approach that tactically. It actually limits the strategy. It doesn't really open things up. It also further limits the amount of characters that are going to be viable on attack teams, and it pushes players towards certain builds. I'm seeing a lot of posts on the forums where people are having to take massively defensive teams on attack teams. So now you're using defensive teams on defense and now more defensive teams on attack teams. You've just basically written off a lot of attack characters, which makes 0 sense. So hopefully this is just the first phase of changes in the AI. I think maybe it needed to go through a lot better testing in terms of if it does get tested in the future, it should not be tested with top level characters, which is no doubt what happened in terms of it being tested with all the premium characters. You need to test this with lower level characters, with characters which most players in your game have. 95% of the community do not have these multifaceted characters that have basically the Olivias, where they have a great rush, a great active, a great specialist skill, where they have everything that's fantastic. They have a character that has one thing, it might be their rush. They have one thing, it might be their specialist skill. They have one thing, it might be their leader skill. You need to create an AI that works for that player, because if it doesn't work for that player, and that's 95% of the community, you are alienating the majority of your player base. I just think this needs to be addressed. I wanted to make a video about it because I feel bad for my community. Seeing my Discord chat doesn't look positive. I mean, there is a lot of negativity a lot of the time. Sometimes that negativity isn't an actual reality and it's just people just getting angry. But this one is a reality in that a lot of characters that people have worked very hard for, and maybe even dropped a little bit of money for, people who don't spend that much money, have completely been written off with just one update. Now, I don't mind AI changes, I don't mind game updates that actually change characters, but within free-to-play, 95% of the community do not have the tools to be able to deal with these massive changes. So hopefully, like I said, there are going to be some more changes in the future to make this a bit more balanced. And I'm only addressing how this affects raids, because within world map and raid map, this is going to drastically change that as well, due to the massive stats those characters have. Now you're going to have 5 characters on a defense team on a road map. Just focus one character. There's no way you can take an offensive character on those road maps anymore. And it just doesn't make any sense. But that's just me. Do tell me what you think about the AI changes, guys. That's it on my video. Thank you very much for tuning in. And as always, keep on surviving, guys. Keep on surviving.